Yo, what's good? Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prodigy Podcast. My name is Tyler Anderson. I will be your host. This episode is coming to you on September 1st, 2024, and it's a juicy one. We're going to call it the My Guys episode. I'm not sure who coined that term. I'm pretty sure it was the fantasy footballers with their big My Guys episode. But basically, we're going to go over my top draft picks for the 2024 season. The people who I am trying to leave every draft with, no matter what. I'm going to have one at each position. So one quarterback, one running back, one wide receiver, and one tight end. Before we get into our first My Guy, please make sure to drop a like or subscribe or follow wherever you are listening or watching. If you want video, head over to the YouTube, the Fantasy Football Prodigy Podcast. And with that being said, let's get right into my first My Guy. So I've talked about him before, but at quarterback, my guy is Kyler Murray, quarterback of the Arizona Cardinals. I feel like some people are kind of catching on to his value, and his ADP might have risen a little bit since earlier in the offseason, but Kyler Murray is still my favorite value in all of fantasy at the quarterback position. I love his ADP in the 6th or even the 7th round if you can get him there. He's going off the board as the quarterback 8, according to Fantasy Pros. And I just love that value because mobile quarterbacks are a cheat code in fantasy, obviously, with the way that scoring works for rushing. And not only does Kyler Murray run, but he puts up big numbers in the passing game as well. In 2023, coming off of that ACL injury on a putrid offense, without really having a number one wide receiver, he was still really good for fantasy, finishing as the quarterback 9 in points per game. Right now, he's being drafted around his floor as the quarterback 8, but I believe he offers high-end quarterback 1 upside with his talent, his rushing ability, and his new situation around him. They just added a generational wide receiver prospect in the draft in Marvin Harrison Jr., and Trey McBride, he broke out in 2023 at tight end, and he should once again be a valuable target for Kyler Murray. And then they just signed Zay Jones in the offseason, who did get suspended, but regardless, they have second-year wide receiver Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch as another target that they can hopefully get the ball to a little bit. And if one of those guys can emerge, this offense could really explode. But even between Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride, he has the weapons to find success in the passing game. Plus, he's going to run the ball a lot, like I said. Just in general, the Cardinals' offense is an obvious candidate to bounce back in 2024, and their defense projects to not be very good, which only means more potential passing volume for Kyler Murray and the Cardinals' offense. Kyler Murray, one of my favorite quarterback values in all of 2024 drafts. Moving on to my next My Guy at the running back position, we are going to go with Alvin Kamara, running back of the New Orleans Saints. He is currently being drafted as the running back 17, 45th overall, in about the 4th or 5th round, according to Fantasy Pros. In 2023, Alvin Kamara played weeks 4 through 17, and he finished as the running back 4 overall in all of fantasy during that stretch in half PPR with 15 half PPR points per game. He did have a rough last couple of games, but if you do take those out, which you really shouldn't do because they were part of the sample size, but just for fun, if you take out those last couple of games where he struggled a little bit, he was actually the running back 2 overall from weeks 4 through 15. So obviously, you played him weeks 16 and 17, and those counted in your lineup, but just kind of shows like at his peak, he was the second best running back in all of fantasy. He is getting older, and this will be his age 29 season, but I'm really just not worried about that for the 2024 season. He already wasn't efficient in 2023, and he was still a top-end running back 1 during the span that he played, so it's not like we need him to have high-efficiency numbers to be a successful running back for your fantasy team. What made him great for fantasy football was he got all the volume in the Saints backfield, and most notably, he received a ton of receiving volume, accumulating 86 targets across those 13 games that he played, turning that into 75 receptions for 466 yards and 1 touchdown. That is a lot of catches for a running back in only 13 games. If you're in a half PPR or PPR league, he's getting, I think it was like 6-ish targets a game. And that is crazy volume at the running back position. And even if he's not efficient, just getting every time he gets a catch, just that's a point. That's half a point. And he had, how many catches did I say? So he had 86 targets. Okay. He had 86 targets. He played 13 games. Yes, that is an average of 6.6 targets per game at the running back position. Not many people are doing that. So you love that about Alvin Kamara. And, you know, while those inefficiencies might still remain, he had 700 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground. So not a ton of touchdowns overall, and he wasn't efficient. But even if those inefficiencies remain, Derek Carr should still be looking Kamara's way in the passing game often, making him a consistent play every week. Fellow backfield running back Kendre Miller, he's dealing with injuries yet again. I know he's been kind of hyped up, but we have yet to see it happen. And I don't expect Jamal Williams to really be a huge threat to his workload. Obviously, he'll spell Kamara every once in a while, just like any backup running back will, but I don't think Jamal Williams is going to be involved enough to make any meaningful impact on Kamara's workload. There has been talk about Taysom Hill, that Swiss Army knife, quarterback, tight end, running back that the Saints have, being involved in the ground game and potentially on the goal line, which, you know, he's been involved in that capacity at times in the past. But like I said, Kamara was already great last season with only 5 rushing touchdowns. So we really don't need him to put up 20 touchdowns at this ADP. Like, obviously, if he does that, he's going to be a league winner. But I think Kamara right now is being drafted well below his floor. And even if his numbers do come down a little bit from last season or just stay about the same, with his expected workload and passing game involvement, I don't see any possible way that he finishes below the running back 17 position where he is being drafted without injury. He is a lock at 45th overall, according to Fantasy Pros. And I mean, he's without injury, he's going to be great. So, Alvin Kamara, running back of the New Orleans Saints, by running back, my guy. Next up, we got the wide receiver position. And we're going to go with DK Metcalf, wide receiver of the Seattle Seahawks. He is currently being drafted as the wide receiver 18, 40th overall in the 4th round, according to Fantasy Pros half PPR ADP. In 2023, in a down year for the Seahawks offense, DK Metcalf finished as the wide receiver 15 in half PPR. While the ride wasn't super smooth, it just shows that even in an off year for Metcalf, he should still be drafted higher than where he is currently going. In fact, since 2020, Metcalf has been the wide receiver 5, the wide receiver 10, the wide receiver 17, and the wide receiver 15. And those finishes were calculated taking out the final week of the season where we don't play in the championship. So I took out week 18 or 17, depending on how many games were in the season that year. In my opinion, Geno Smith at quarterback overachieved a couple seasons ago, and I think he underachieved last season. But I do expect the passing game to fall kind of somewhere in the middle in 2024. Not get too into the weeds, I saw some numbers with Geno Smith that suggest that, you know, maybe there was just a little bit of bad luck where they didn't necessarily connect on some throws, where regression to the mean might have some of those passes connect, and we might see a little bit of a boost in the passing game. There's also some renewed hope in Seattle with a new offensive coordinator there as well. Those don't always work out, but, you know, last year the passing game didn't pan out very well. So even if it's more of the same, I still think Metcalf can exceed his ADP. And if things do improve, that just makes him an even better value. At worst, I think Metcalf is being drafted at his floor, but at best, he is an extreme value who has the physical ability needed to far exceed his ADP and be a league winner. We've seen him be a top 5 wide receiver before, and he is a physical freak. I think people forget how good he actually is, and he could definitely win some people some leagues this year in 2024. And we're finally on the last my guy. We're going to move on to the tight end position, and I'm going to go with Jake Ferguson, tight end of the Dallas Cowboys. He is currently being drafted as the tight end 9, 80th overall in about the 7th round, according to Fantasy Pros. Many fantasy players want to take one of those top 5 elite options at the tight end position. But if you wait until later in the draft, I think Jake Ferguson is a tremendous value at the tight end position. Ferguson was the tight end 8 last season with only 5 touchdowns. There is some room to improve in the touchdown department, obviously, which would elevate him to a real difference maker at the tight end position. But even if that doesn't happen, I think he is poised to have another really solid year at tight end. He's once again tied to a really good Cowboys passing offense, and he should be heavily involved. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb is the #1 alpha wide receiver there. He just got paid a bunch of money. He's going to get most of the targets, and the offense is going to run through him. But when you look past CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson is going to have to be involved, and with Rico Dowdle, Zeke, Dalvin Cook in the backfield, they're not going to be able to really lean on the running game. So there's going to be plenty of passing volume. I'm expecting this passing offense in general to be really good for fantasy once again, and Jake Ferguson should definitely benefit from that. Once you get to where Ferguson and David Njoku of the Cleveland Browns are being drafted at tight end, I think there's a noticeable tier break right after you get past those guys. So Ferguson is right at the end of a tier that I feel comfortable starting each and every week. That's also why I really like him as a value, because he's one of those last guys where you can wait until, he's going to in about the 7th round. If you can get him in the 7th or 8th round, you can fill your roster with other skill position players, maybe grab a quarterback, and then you can draft him late and still feel comfortable that you have a guy who's going to be a solid tight end 1. And if he can get in the end zone a few more times, he's going to really make a difference at the tight end position. And those are my guys. Just to do a quick recap, we have Kyler Murray, quarterback of the Arizona Cardinals, Alvin Kamara, running back of the New Orleans Saints, DK Metcalf, wide receiver of the Seattle Seahawks, and Jake Ferguson, tight end of the Dallas Cowboys. Those are 4 guys that I'm trying to get in every draft that I am in. If I don't get one of them, my heart aches a little bit. And yeah, I think if you draft these guys, you're going to win your leagues. It's a personal guarantee. We obviously know that's not true. Some of these guys might not work out, but I think if they stay healthy, these are all guys who are safe bets to hit their floor that they're being drafted at a minimum. But if things work out in their favor for the better, they have potential to actually exceed their ADP. But a lot of these guys are being drafted like where they would finish if things really didn't go well. So that's what I would call a safe pick. And a lot of these guys have upside as well. And at the end of the day, these are my 2024 my guys. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Please make sure to drop a like. And if you are watching on YouTube, and make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you are listening. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.